How is now that I have a webcam at last, oh, it's a good quality camera anyway. I can do a lot more of these kind of more relaxed, informal vlog type things, and so answer questions on topics and stuff that I speak about in my occult work and anything really to do with that and the anvil of the psyche, social engineering thing. They're always like they're huge subjects that are really always fascinating to learn about and to talk about. And I learn a lot from you guys as well, reading your comments. So don't, I do appreciate that as well. That the comments on my videos are, fertile ground for discourse and exchange of really good information. So thank you all for being involved in the conversation as such, literally. Now, I got a question there. Someone asked me about the archons. What do I think of the archons? I did address this before, and I'll address it again, but this is slightly different. Now, in the alternative scene, in the last decade or so, people have become very, very interested in this idea of the archons as sort of like interdimensional beings, or perhaps they're the grey aliens. David Icke has pushed them quite heavily to imply that they're the reptilians, and it's all based basically on John Lam Lash's book, Not in His Image, which I read a good while back when not when it first came out, but like a few years later when I first discovered the man's work. And I did an interview with him on some shows, a couple of shows with him, and it's a good read. It definitely is a good read, but I disagree with some. Well, I don't disagree. I have issues with it. Some parts of it, I have not really found much. Okay, let me talk. If this is a new subject to you, the archons were what they were called. What the Gnostics called their oppressors. Now, archon is a Greek term, an ancient Greek term, Hellenic term, that just means lord or ruler. And the Gnostics were being horribly persecuted by the Roman Empire, particularly in Egypt. And they were obviously in a cult mindset where they were kind of barricaded away, afraid, forget about Branch Davidians type mindset. And a lot of their work originates from that psychological framework, that way of thinking. And they were very paranoid, and I have to say, with justifiably so. And they were persecuted by the church, which was the Roman Empire in Egypt at that time, the Vatican. But it wasn't even the Vatican as such. Remember, it was Second Temple Rabbinical Judaism being incorporated as the fate of the Roman Empire. Now, so people would say the thing that developed through John Lam Lash's work in the book Not in His Image. Now, the thing I found best about this book was that he was talking a lot about the horrible things that were done to these people and the viciousness of the early church. And it's definitely a good read for that. It's in the kind of vein of Catherine Nixby's The Darkening Age. It's definitely a religious manifesto in many ways, so it's not particularly impartial in that sense, but that's okay. I have no problem with that. Now, so there's a supernaturalization of the archons being a kind of a being that infects in people. I can't find really much sources for this outside his work. Now, I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying I can't really find a lot to correlate with this. As far as what I can tell, the archons mentioned in the Nag Hammadi script is basically just talking about the bureaucracy of the Roman Empire or the early church in terms of almost like our oppressors, and then that seems to have been supernaturalized into the interdimensional oppressors, and that's what I don't find a lot of proof of. But they probably do exist, and I'll explain that in a bit. Now, the Nag Hammadi script, the Nag Hammadi and similar scripts, as well as what books that were left out of the Council of Nicaea, is often covered in the idea of that the Gospel of St. Thomas. That the Gospel of St. Thomas, see, I don't just say these things. I've read I read books. I don't just make comments on things that I'm just watching a few videos. And the Gospel of St. Thomas is what we're led to believe is the real Jesus. And this is the stuff they took out. But it's distinct from the synoptic Gospels in that we get the real story. This is the basic premise behind all this kind of stuff. It's still the same thing, basically. And this has been used for all kinds, kind of like a hippie version of Christianity. It's always been kind of popular with that kind of idea. And it's never really won me over. I just don't. It's just, to me, the whole thing, as well as not in his image, there's still, these kind of books are still mandates for entrapping our European souls into the spiritual and the religions, the traditions of the Middle East, which is not where our ancestors are from. And it's still part of that. It's still part. Look east, Western man, for your soul. You know me, I totally disagree with that unless you're looking towards the Indo-European origins, and that's why it's okay to look at things like Hinduism, because we have a direct lineage to that from our Indo-European ancestors. And all you have to do is work on the comparative mythology, and it's all there for you to be easily found. Now, I'm a bit uncomfortable because it's a new setup for me, so bear with me if I'm a bit not my usual effervescent self. So anyway, the archons were supernaturalized within alternative media, and the idea was put out there that they are interdimensional beings who serve this thing called the Demiurge. Now, the Demiurge is a fascinating concept within Gnosticism. It's almost like an early Lovecraftian idea brought out by the Gnostics, that there's this and you know something, it's true in many ways, that there's an off-planet being, Jehovah, which is one of the things, both the Gnostics and then their later descendants, like the Bogomils of Eastern Europe, and then of course the poor unfortunate Cathars of France and Spain. And the Demiurge controls life on this planet, but doesn't be on this planet. It's like an off-planet alien force. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I wouldn't say literally alien spacemen, but you do have like super powerful demons like Choronzon 333, and this has manifested in many cultures, including Indo-European cultures. We see a lot of the really good stuff in our pagan European traditions was written out by the Christian scribes and authors who compile things like the Irish Annals and the Irish Mythological Cycle, all compiled by Christian monks and with a mandate. And this is why people think that Scotia's grave is in Ireland is pure nonsense. And the first person in Ireland was Noah's daughter of the Parthenons. And you have the same thing, unfortunately, in Germanic and Nordic Viking, the Eddas and the sagas were heavily written and edited by Christians to turn the likes of Odin into a Christ kind of figure, so they could easily incorporate Christ into their world view. So it goes on a lot. But if you look at the Vedic world in Hinduism, you get an insight of what it was like, and there's complexities regarding these super demons as well, like Kali, not the goddess Kali, the demon Kali. And Kali Ma is the goddess Kali, but there's a demon called Kali as well. Now, and the similar kind of ideas like that exist when you look at the comparative mythologies. So I'm not against the idea of the Demiurge. I think there's probably quite a lot of truth to it. Now, the archons, are they supernatural beings or not? Well, they weren't, but they are now, and I'll tell you why they are now. Any good chaos magician will tell you that if you put enough emotional focus into an idea and a concept, especially if it's got a spiritual dimension and charged with fear and charged with energy levels, psychic energy levels, and of course poured into the internet, which is a sentient, like chaos magic machine at this point, that you will invoke and make them real. Now, when I say real, I don't mean like they're real there. They're energy forms that have taken on this aspect. They've taken on this aspect. When a demon is summoned like Beelzebub, it doesn't appear as a group of flies or whatever. That's the energy force taking that. This is what they appear as. The energy force is resolved into Aiwass or a lamb or anything you want, a UFO, lights in the sky, everything. Then there's a big connection between this and the UFO culture, because there's a lot of tie-in with that kind of thing as well. It's really chaos magic, and what the chaos magic is doing is actually turbocharging these energetic forces, these sort of like what the Greeks called like daemons and demons, the genius idea, and it comes to reality. It's manufactured in reality. It's directly. If you look at quantum physics and quantum science, that's basically how it happens. It's the same way probably Higgs boson was created. It was created as an act of longing by those scientists at the CERN Hadron Collider, and they brought it into manifestation. Well, the same thing with the archons. The archons now exist just because people are talking about them and afraid of them, and now they exist because they're chaos created. But a lot of chaos magic is also highly unstable as well. So they won't always exist, or they will, they will modify themselves into something depending on the attention they're being given to it. The Gnostics themselves were brutally persecuted and hunted down by the Roman Empire / Second Temple Rabbinical Judaism for numerous reasons, not just religious, and also there was a persecution of paganism that was just seen as a rival to Christianity, but they didn't have the same major power that, say, the Eastern Orthodox Church did, because they had an empire behind them. So they were easily eliminated, just like the Cathars were. Now, they were romanticized throughout history, and there was a long belief right up until the Renaissance that the Gnostics still existed, in the same way we wonder if Druids still exist today, hidden behind the shadows. The Gnostics the Druids do exist. They're called Freemasons. The Freemasonry definitely came from that. And the Gnostics were kind of like the secret college, the Illuminati. There was an original Illuminati before the Bavarian Illuminati. They're called the Illuminati, and they were like the secret college. They were a belief that these great minds were looking after the affairs of good people around the world, outside the control of kings and governments and stuff like that. And there was a belief the Gnostics were the same, that the Gnostics exist, and there's very good evidence to suggest that the original Illuminati, not the Bavarian Illuminati, they really did exist, came from Gnostics, or were Gnostics in hiding, and this was incorporated into Spain in particular, and in Italy, and then the Grand Orient Lodge of Paris claims direct lineage from these Gnostics in the original Illuminati, who had moved to France and opened up the Grand Orient Lodge, which was then ironically infected by the Bavarian Illuminati. Whereas the British, Irish, and American lodges, they said that they were directly connected from the Druids. That's what their rights were, according to Thomas Paine in his History of Freemasonry. And it's a remarkable read, that book. So there you go. Are the archons real as a in terms of how a historical thing? Absolutely. Were they supernatural beings to the Gnostics? I don't know. I'm still looking. Probably not. Maybe there's more evidence. I don't know. Are the archons real now? Absolutely, 100% yes, thanks to chaos magic. And that's basically it. So, you can't, just because you see something on the internet, don't automatically believe it's true. You should always have to research, both mainstream and alternative, and then you kind of get the picture. That's how that works. And that's why I have thousands of books, and that's why you should too, because the internet is not good enough for that. Bye.